Okay, let's unpack this. We're going beneath the surface of, well, one of the most common yet profound transitions in modern life.
We are. We're talking about
Mhm.
divorce. Or, as our sources frame it, marital dissolution.
And for this deep dive, we've gathered a lot of research, longitudinal studies, psychological analyses, and they all treat the end of a marriage not as just a legal transaction, but as this seismic event.
That framing is absolutely essential. Our mission
Yeah.
today is to move past the immediate, the grief of the central couple and to actually map out the psychological ripple
A
effects.
ripple effect.
Exactly. We're
Okay.
looking for the measurable consequences that spread far beyond those two individuals, reaching the children, the community, and even, yes, third parties.
It just changes everything. And the sources state right up front that dissolution will affect the psyche of everyone involved. That's a
A
given.
confirmed finding, yeah.
The real complexity and what we're diving into is understanding to what extent, what are the specific mechanisms? How does this play out across all those different lives?
We're basically examining how that core family unit fractures and then how all the pieces, well, how they settle, sometimes decades down the line.
So let's start where the shadows are longest, and that is with the children. The studies compiled here paint a statistically tracked picture of undeniable difficulty.
Yeah, and these are not just subjective feelings. These are verifiable life outcomes that,
Yeah.
well, they'd really grab your attention.
Like what? What are we talking about?
We're talking about a higher likelihood of them divorcing in their own future relationships,
Wow.
an earlier initiation of sexual activity, an increased risk of breaking the law, greater susceptibility to addiction,
That's a decline in school performance, right?
and a decline in academic performance. It's
Yeah.
a whole cascade of effects.
That is just a staggering list of potential life-altering consequences. Do the sources give us a clear reason why? A mechanism?
They do. It really seems to boil down to two things.
Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. You are doing important work.
Role modeling and supervision. Children learn how to manage conflict or, not manage it by watching their parents. So if the divorce is hostile, that becomes the child's template for relationships.
Which leads directly to them having a higher divorce rate later on.
Exactly. And on top of that, the dissolution often leads to, well, less parental supervision, which allows for more risk-taking. That links directly to the addiction and rule-breaking stats.
So they're absorbing this negative lesson on conflict while losing their safety net. But our sources say these outcomes aren't. They're not inevitable. It's all tied to one crucial factor.
This is the pivot point. The ultimate impact is profoundly tied to how the parents manage their relationship after the separation.
So do they cooperate? Do they still show respect?
Precisely. That post-divorce collaboration, or the lack of it, it acts like a shock absorber for the children. If the conflict just stops, the children often fare much, much better.
And drilling down even further, the sources point to a specific age range of extreme vulnerability.
They do. The data points very specifically to children who are between 3 and 10 years old when the separation happens.
3 to 10. Why that window? What makes it so uniquely damaging?
Because that's when a child is forming their foundational attachments. Their whole view of the world as a safe or a precarious place is being set.
I see.
So when their primary structure just fractures at that stage, it feeds directly into the most common neurotic reaction we see.
Which is,
A profound, almost existential fear of abandonment.
and what does that fear look like when it shows up, say, 20 years later in their adult life?
It often manifests as hypervigilance, an inability to trust that anything is stable, sometimes even self-sabotage.
How so?
Because they saw the fundamental structure of their life disappear, they can enter their own relationships, basically expecting them to fail. They might be the partner who pushes people away before they can be left.
Which, tragically, brings us right back to that statistic about them being more likely to divorce.
It's a closed loop, a true intergenerational consequence if that post-separation relationship is managed poorly.
That really brings a new weight to the responsibility of the separating adults. Okay, let's unpack this and transition to the emotional earthquakes felt by the primary parties themselves, the husband and the woman.
Right, because while the event is traumatic for both, the sources suggest the trauma profile is actually very different for each.
Let's start with the husband. What does the research say there?
For the husband, the trauma is often a devastating blow to his sense of self-worth, his identity.
His identity.
Yeah, the sources explain that for many men, their identity is so heavily invested in being a partner, a provider, the head of a family. When that role is just revoked, the loss of self-esteem can be crippling.
Is there anything in the research about societal pressures that make it so specific to him.
Absolutely. The research suggests that the divorce often feels like a public failure of his core competence, his ability to maintain his family.
So it's not just a private grief, it's a public one too.
It is. And this deep emotional trauma, it requires a long and often very difficult recovery. It's much more than just moving house.
And that trauma then shows up in his ability to form new relationships.
Precisely. We see a clear loss of trust in the opposite sex. It can develop into cynicism, emotional withdrawal.
He closes himself off.
He does. The loss of that structure increases the possibility of depression, and the uncertainty is just palpable. Will he find a new partner? And if he does, what kind of relationship can he even build with all this new baggage? His entire future is destabilized.
Now, when we shift to the woman, the sources suggest a different kind of impact, equally intense, but more centered on reevaluation.
Correct. For the woman, the breakup often acts like an emergency reset button. It forces this dramatic reevaluation of her values, her principles, her whole outlook on life. It's a huge moment of personal reckoning.
And does that lead to growth? Or something else?
Well, the research notes a fascinating split. For some, the necessity of independence triggers real personal growth, a stronger sense of self.
Right for others.
For others, the experience leads to the opposite. Becoming emotionally closed off, cynical, maybe overly rigid in what they expect from future relationships.
So it's a high-stakes moment where she's either refined by the fire or, I guess, hardened by it.
Exactly. And one of the most poignant things highlighted in the sources is the feeling of the loss of the former self.
The loss of the former self. What does that mean practically?
That identity, the wife, the unit of two, the person in that shared story, it's just gone. She feels nostalgic for a version of herself that she can never get back to. That identity fracture is a huge part of her recovery.
And the sources also point to a behavioral change that comes out of this, something that can actually become a risk in the future.
This is a fascinating finding. It's about the tendency to leave.
The tendency to leave.
Yeah. Once a person has gone through a dissolution, it seems to psychologically lower the barrier to separating again in the future. Breaking up might become easier, even from a valuable relationship.
It's like the emotional muscle memory for it has been built.
That's a great way to put it. The option to exit just feels more viable, even when the relationship might be salvageable.
So the trauma of the first one creates a blueprint, making the next one feel less like a tragedy and more like a logistical hurdle.
Precisely. One study outlined by the authors noted that women who had been through a messy divorce sometimes described a second separation not as a tragedy, but just a logistical annoyance.
Wow. That level of detachment shows you how profoundly that first experience can change you.
It really does.
Okay. Here's where it gets really interesting, because these ripple effects, they just keep spreading outwards.
Right.
Our sources indicate the emotional toll involves a person we rarely consider, the lover.
The unexpected player.
If infidelity was part of the story, of course.
Right. And the sources provide this sharp analysis of the unique stresses experienced by the lover. They aren't just starting a new relationship, they are fully entangled in the fallout of the old one.
And they're carrying a unique moral burden while doing it.
A huge moral burden.
What are those specific stresses, beyond just the general difficulty?
Well, on the practical side, the lover might have to end his own previous relationship, which is highly complicated if he has his own kids and responsibilities. The trauma just immediately doubles.
Right.
But maybe more significant is the moral pressure. Even if the primary marriage was already failing, the lover is often seen by everyone else, the kids, the extended family, as the person who destroyed the family.
That external judgment must be incredibly difficult to handle while you're trying to build something new. He's not just a partner. He's often cast as the villain in the whole story.
He is. And the consequence of this, according to the sources, is highly personal and potentially permanent.
How so?
If the lover was unfaithful in his own relationship, going through this whole painful public process, witnessing the collateral damage firsthand, it can fundamentally alter his character.
It forces a confrontation with his own choices.
A deep confrontation with his own ethical boundaries, yeah. It can affect his whole future life trajectory.
So what does this all mean when we connect the dots? From the child's psyche to the husband's identity crisis, and then to the character change of a third party.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the overall finding is, I think, inescapable. Marital dissolution is not a private two-person event.
No.
It's an event that changes the lives of many people, often fundamentally and permanently. It's a catalyst that changes future behavior, personal values, emotional states across an entire network.
And that leads directly to the core warning embedded in all this research.
Because
Before making such a final decision, it is absolutely crucial to grasp these vast consequences we've mapped out. You have to be sure the decision will truly lead to a better life for everyone involved,
especially the children.
especially the children, rather than becoming this huge mistake to regret later on.
It's like a conscious assessment of the collateral damage, if you will, recognizing that the decision is going to ripple through generations.
That's a profound synthesis. I mean, we've moved from the vulnerability of a 3-year-old child through the psychological fracture of the spouses, all the way to the moral crucible faced by a third party.
The breadth of the impact is staggering.
It is. But knowing these mechanisms, that gives you the power to manage them.
Indeed. And for you, the listener, we want to leave you with one final thought to consider, which comes directly from the most critical finding in our material.
Okay?
If we accept that the most vulnerable time for a child is between 3 and 10 years old, how does the management of the post-separation relationship by the parents become the single most critical investment in that child's future well-being? What steps can be taken today to ensure that the process, no matter how painful, shields that future?
Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. If you want to overcome betrayal, break toxic cycles, take control of your relationship choices, read How to Deal with a Love Triangle. The link is below the video.